something we all need. Gotta have it now if you wanna succeed. Striving, surviving, that's no doubt. Sticking together, we gon' find a way out. So all you young people, give it your. So all you young people, give it your. So all you young people, give it your. So all you young people, give it your.
Good afternoon, the back community. Thank you as always for staying involved. Thank you for staying engaged. I have been waiting for today's guest for quite some time because she left quite an impression on me when I first met her. And I'll tell you why in a short bit. But, welcome to season 4 of the back community, Dream Bigger. And today's guest is individual who definitely dreams big and has plans through the work in the space that she's in DEI to transform everyone's lives. But without further ado, long story short, today's guest on the back community is Miss Charlene Holmes of Imana Borena. Did I say that right?
Almost. You almost got it. Imana Borena.
But listen, I started to add that little what you just did at the end, and I was just like, nah, it's probably not that. I should have asked that before. So Imana Borena.
Borena.
There you go. Listen. Do. Well, first things first, thank you for affording me your time. Thank you for being on the back community. And like I said, I could not wait to get to you.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I know that you left a little impression on me too, because the first conversation we was going at it. And I love that. I love engaging in thought partnership with the people in my community who look like me, who live some of the same lived experiences that I have, but also have their own views, right, on the world. And that meant a lot. So it's nice to be able to be here with you today. I've been waiting for this.
Let's go. Let's go. So yeah, I said, so I happened to meet Charlene some time ago, maybe about a year ago. I don't know how long it's been now. We were at Johnny's in Manans, and we had this interesting conversation that I'm not going to start off with, but we had an interesting conversation, and it was around the space that she actually works in already with diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, as a lot of people like to call it. But I'm going to come back to that later and tell you about how she captivated me and got my attention in that conversation. But my first official question for you on the back community is actually an opportunity for you to open up and tell the back community a little bit more about you. I always try to do my best to introduce you, but I think nobody can introduce themselves better than themselves. So without further ado, my first official question for you, Miss Charlene, is please tell the back community who you are and what it is that you do.
Hi guys, Charlene Holmes here, Chief Equity Officer and founder of Imana Borena, Inc. Imana Borena means God's royalty. I know people always ask me that, so I might as well just tell you guys that. It's Swahili and Burundi, so it's a mixture of two different African languages and West African languages at that. So I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner. You know, Tyrell, you were like, oh, everyone calls it DEI. Some people in 2023 still do not know what DEI means. Like, what is that acronym? I'll tell them I'm a DEI practitioner. And they're like, what's that? So diversity, equity, and inclusion. And diversity, equity, and inclusion work is really about understanding systems and structures and where barriers are present for people who are racialized in their identity. But it also spans into these protected classes spaces. But we can get into that later. I'm also a trained anti-racist. That's where I think my perspective and Tyrell started to, that's where we sparked our conversation. But most importantly, I'm a faith-based diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner. So a lot of people are like, faith and DEI, how do they go together? So I always tell people I have two biblical pillars. My first one is Isaiah 1:17, which says, learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, and plead the case of the widow. And then Psalms 82:3-4 says, defend the poor and the fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy, deliver the poor and needy, and free them from the hand of the wicked. So those are my pillars in the work that I do, and they guide me to righteousness. I believe in righteousness and equity, and those are pillars of the God that I serve. And so I bring that to my space. I'm not the type of individual that superimposes that. But when you meet me, I tell you that up front so you know who you're dealing with. I spent over 10 years in higher education, working at the dean level, and I had several leadership positions. My job in those spaces were policy analysis. I really was able to analyze policy and develop metrics on how barriers were present for students of color, staff of color, and faculty of color in predominantly white spaces. So a lot of my career has been spent in really, really, really white spaces because I feel like, I don't know, God puts me there. He just put, anytime I'm going through my journey, God has placed me in those spaces, and I've been able to take on this transformative thinking and impart it on others. And I try to do that in excellence every step of the way. That's my professional side. My personal side, I'm an auntie, a sister, a daughter, a community lender. Like, I love everything about me and my family. I'm from the Caribbean. So a lot of my upbringing is seeing a lot of Black excellence. I don't see myself in a deficit. And I bring that fusion of professional and personal to my space. But I recognize when I have to uplift my professional self and when sometimes I have to tell my personal self to back up, because you can get emotional in the DEI space. So yeah, I'm multidimensional, multifaceted, but that's me. And I'm a business owner. And most of the time I have to continue to tell people that I'm sorry, I'm a business owner. Because it seems like people don't believe Black people could be business owners, but nevertheless, that's me.
Or that you do this mighty work for free. So it's just like,
yes.
Yeah. Oh, don't you just want to come speak to my people? You have enough time in the day to come.
Just come and talk to us.
Yes.
It'd be so great if you would just present, and we can tell you what you should present on.
Say thank you, but no thank you. I've been doing this work for quite some time. I have my experience for a reason.
Pay the lady.
Yeah, pay the lady. That's right. That's right.
What she weighs. All right.
There you go.
And I'm a size woman, so I weigh a lot.
She said, pay me like I weigh. Pay me like I weigh. Well, let me see, man. What was it about? I know you have a pretty diverse background, but I have to ask, what was it about a DEI that that caught your attention, that brought your love and passion together for you to create Imana Borena?
Yeah, Imana Borena. Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think anybody's actually asked me that directly, so this will be my first time answering this, Terrell. So I went to a predominantly white school when I was in middle school and high school because my mom ended up marrying my stepdad. And in my senior year at the school, at my high school, someone wrote nigger on my locker. And it was only myself and another Black young lady. And they wrote nigger, the N-word, on my locker. And they were tried to cover it up. Obviously, this is a crime. This is a federal offense. It should be investigated. They need to find who did it. But the school ended up erasing it immediately. So they didn't have any handwriting, any evidence, anything of that nature when it got to the law enforcement level. And they kind of was trying to, sweep it under the rug. And at the age of 16, I was like, you guys are not going to sweep this under the rug. And I wrote a speech. And I demanded that my speech be read to everyone at the school, including the staff. First, they tried to circumvent it and say, oh, you can just read it per class. Like, you can't make an announcement. You have to read it per class. And I did that, but I also pushed back every class. For one day, I'm going to go to every single class and I'm going to read this speech. And in my speech, I talked about the different components of Black history, my identity in that space being so racialized that I felt like I had to be the spokesperson for all Black people, me challenging the white staff members to be what we now call allies in the space and disrupt some of this behavior that's happening. I was doing this at 16. And now that I look back, I'm like, wow, it's crazy how like your gifts and talents, they're just innate in you.
Yeah.
You could think you want to do something, you know, you have high aspirations. I had aspirations to be a physical therapist,
Mm,
but that did not happen. I'm in my lane now. And from the age of 16, I saw that. So that sparked a journey into advocacy. And so
mm,
I started off at the Harlem Children's Zone as a college advisor. And that opened up the door for me to get into DEI. DEI literally fell in my lap. I just
mm,
had this gift to analyze policy. I had this gift to be able to articulate what was the occurrence. I knew how to operationalize before I even understood what the term operationalization meant, right?
mm,
I knew how to identify and articulate myself through systems and structures where people used to be like, sometimes I would get shunned in places. Like people would be like, oh, we can't deal with you. Like you're just too opinionated.
mm,
But now, hindsight 2020, I was honing my craft. It was like that iron sharpens iron. God was ironing me, it was sharpening me during that time so that it would take me to being a business owner, owning Imana Borena, crafting, doing the curriculum development. All of my trainings I created myself.
mm.
And some of them are like super, and this is not me tipping my hat. Some of them are even ahead of the time that we're in right now
Mm.
because
Good.
I'm able to see. I have this lens that was given to me as a gift from God. So he has been developing me over the years, and that's how it brought me into DEI. It kind of just fell into my lap.
That's the best place though. It's the best because like you said, we can have our own plans and
Mm-hmm.
and then God will sit back and laugh and says, no, I got
No,
something totally different lined up for you. Now you can keep fighting me on it, Jonah, as much as you like,
okay.
right? But until you do right by me.
Everything you do is going to crumble. Shout out to the color purple coming out this month. There's been arguments over Thanksgiving in my family about the color purple. My family believes they shouldn't touch it. It's a classic. It's one of those things you do not touch. But I'm excited to see what they do because I love me some Fanny, honey.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, man, and it seems like God uniquely put you in environments, and oftentimes it's not until we grow past or get out of those experiences that we really understand the value of it. So imagine you being one of two other people, black in this university, what that experience was for you, but it also was shaping you. It'll expose you to a lot of negativity, but it also will prepare you for how to cultivate healthier relationships, right, and force people to dialogue, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
I think that that's one of the benefits oftentimes that's overlooked from being able to embrace diversity,
Mm-hmm.
right? The diversity can be a diversity of so many things.
Yes.
And being able to embrace other people's diversity not only equips you for that particular person, but it equips you for everybody else that you're going to meet along the line. So God had been sharpening you and preparing you for this work. And shout out to who's that? Is it Jeffrey Canada? Was that?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it is.
So I've
That's the
always
key.
been in love from the time that I heard about what he was doing there, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, man, that was so dynamic. So
Yes,
that was a great spot to get your roots at
it
and to
is.
learn everything that you're out here doing in the world.
Yeah, they call it the country club. Shout out to the Harlem Children's Zone, still doing amazing work. Kwame is the CEO right now, but Jeff still sits on the board. I'm still connected to all the people that I met there. You know, that was a very significant time in my life because, like I told you, I come from the Bahamas, which, is a
Mm,
wealthy Black nation. We exchange the dollar evenly. Matter of fact, it's 2 pennies more than the American dollar in the Bahamas,
mm,
right? The Bahamian dollar, excuse me. So I never seen Blackness from a deficit until I started having to learn what it was like to be Black in America.
mm,
And when I started to learn that duality, um, it was a deficit model. There were times like, I grew up in New York City. There were times where I thought it would be hard not to go to jail. I remember
mm.
thinking that, like, wow, how it's probably hard to stay out of jail. What am I going to do to stay out of jail? Why should a little child have those thoughts? Nevertheless, fast forward, the significant time at the Harlem Children's Zone for me was that I was able to see Black people putting up numbers in America.
There you go.
I seen people like me with master's degrees, PhDs, titles, senior managers. So for me, it was like this entirely cultivated space where representation mattered. And then they called it zoning, where like they understood the strategic processes for us to start taking back our communities. But we can get into that in another conversation because gentrification came in and we know what that does.
Yep.
But the Harlem Children's Zone really is a successful space, and it really cultivates a workforce, a generation of young people who look like us, who are educated, who are worldly. And I mean worldly in a sense that like you can place us anywhere and we can adapt. And we recognize how important it is for us to put that hand back and be like, come on, I'm gonna take you with me,
Yeah. And it equips you to be it equips us. I'm gonna throw myself in the same category to empathize and sympathize with the audiences that we're working with. And it's not just coming from a philosophical approach. It's just like, no, I'm speaking to you from a place of empathy. Like I've gone through these experiences too, and I also realize what it takes to make that transition from here to there. Because, like you said, what kid should have that understanding or that thought in their mind that I'm going to go to jail someday? Like that's part of the process. For me as a Black man, you'll say that's part of our indoctrination process for a lot of Black men. You're going to go to jail. It's just like, how do I avoid that, right? Where at a time where a lot of it has become normalized. It's like, oh, you need it. That's your rites of passage. It's like, nah, man, it's so much more out here in the world. But until you start to get exposed to it, like you said, for you being at the Harlem Children's Zone, it was just like you start to see, well, in Harlem in general, you start to see, Black excellence.
Yep.
I know we got a Whole Foods up that way now and Planet Fitness and all of that stuff around there now. But, I spend a lot of time in Harlem too.
Me too. I love Harlem. Shout out to Harlem, the Harlem
Shout out to
Renaissance.
Harlem. Yeah, man. But,
any of you who know, you go back to the Harlem Renaissance. A lot of history in the Harlem Renaissance. That was the birth of our most of what we're engaging in now, our literature, our art, our philosophical thinking, our sociological thinking comes from some of the pioneers who were right in New York City and Harlem. So
let me see. I'm going to pick your brain, and I need to stay in the DEI space for this next question. And it's realizing that as you said earlier, there's still a lot of people who don't even know what DEI is, right? Now, if you break it down and be like, oh, diversity, equity, inclusion, but when you say it, it's one of those popular terms that is now getting more people are getting more familiar with. But how has it been navigating through that space as a Black woman, and how inviting has other people been to hearing your curriculum?
That's a really great question. It's twofold. When I think of it as like multidimensional. So forgive me for closing my eyes. So I have two different approaches when it comes to being a practitioner in the DEI space. I have curriculum that I have for individuals who are not racialized, or i.e. white folks. And then I have curriculum that is focused on racialized identities, i.e. Black, Latino, Asian, people who have intersections of identity, right? As it relates to anti-Blackness, not to protected classes. So I want to be very specific about that. In some cases, say I go into a predominantly white space, it's all good and receptive as long as we're intellectualizing the work and we're philosophically, engaging in different types of nuances of the work. But as soon as we start to actualize the work and pinpoint where needs improvement, I'll put that needs improvement and or racist behavior starts to influence decision making, that's when I get the most contention. Now, on the flip side, like I said, I'm going to be real. Come for me if you want to, but I ain't sent for you. Our people need to wake up. Your lived experience is not your doctrine.
Mm.
The landscape of diversity, equity, and inclusion is theoretical practice, inquiry, data analysis, and dissemination. It is not because you're Black you can do DEI work. A lot of our people are engaging in behaviors that are white supremacy with a Black face. I said it. And it's not right. It doesn't make you right. Just because you benefit from the system doesn't mean that you shouldn't be advocating for those who don't. Some of our people uphold systems and structures that are very harmful to us. And so that's why I have a different approach when it comes to our community. Most of my contention in my career has been from our community.
Yep.
And our community members who hold positions and power and decide to perpetuate the same systemic harms, both psychological, emotional, and physical harms, to our community members. There have been so many times that I have coached people who have intersections of identity because they have been harmed at the hands of those who look just like them. So I say that, and I said, come for me if you want to, our people need to wake up. And it's almost sickening sometimes, and it almost makes me angry sometimes. So I have this duality where I do have this structural racism that holds white people who decide that they don't want to move DEI related or anti-racist related initiatives forward. I have that contention. But then I have this contention from our own people who feel as though because they're in the palace, nothing's going to happen to them. So I give them this story, and I'm answering this the long way. I give them this story, the story of Esther in the Bible. The king did not know that Esther was a Hebrew woman. Her uncle Mordecai told her to keep it a secret. Esther was fair and had favor. She was very beautiful. So the king's the guy who picked the wife for the king, he really liked Esther. So Esther had favor and was brought before the king, and the king liked Esther. So she became the queen, right? Now Mordecai knew that one of the king's right-hand mans in them, I'm doing it in layman's terms. Yeah. Mordecai knew that the king's right-hand man, one of his generals, hated the Hebrew people, the Israel people. And wanted law, he got a legislation passed to kill and completely genocide the Hebrew people in that time. And when Mordecai, remember Mordecai, the uncle of Esther, when he caught wind, he wrote Esther, because he used to be at the gate of the palace. He wrote Esther, and he like, Esther, the general's out here, he got the king to pass legislation laws to kill us complete on a specific date. It even had a date that he was going to go in and completely annihilate all the Jews that was left, the Hebrew people that was left in that space. Esther writes Mordecai back and goes, well, I'm in the kingdom. Like, I don't think, like, what that got to do with me? Right, what you want me to do? That ain't got nothing to do with me. Here's
my life's in danger too if I tell them.
Partly she was saying that because Mordecai's response is what the real thing is. Mordecai said to her, you think because you in the palace, when they find out you a Hebrew, they ain't coming for you too? Perhaps you were placed in the palace for a time such as this.
Oof.
At that moment, Esther went on a 3-day fast, her, all her maidens, and all the Hebrew people, all the Israel people. And after 3 days, she went before the king. There was like a whole thing, and she got favor before the king, and she saved a whole generation. Perhaps you were placed here for a time such as this. Think of Mordecai telling Esther, you think because you in a palace and you got position and power, when they find out who you really are, they not going to come for you too? And that's how our people function. Well, I was chosen. I got selected to be a part of this group, and they accept me here, not recognizing that at any time when that legislation gets passed, they coming for you too.
I love that. I love it. I love the story. I love the vividness of it, and you know how the poignancy of it. It was, you said it to drive home a point. Like, we all have, I always tell everybody, we all got influence. We got we can choose to will our influence in a negative or a positive way. For
Mm-hmm.
Esther, you know, she had to be reminded of who she was
Mm-hmm.
and to make a choice. You know what I mean? To do something for God's people or to do something for yourself.
Yep.
Right. Right. And the same thing with a lot of us. And it's just like, you know, if once you realize that the situations or the experiences that you go through are not just uniquely for you, they become powerful, right? You can use the experiences, you can be used. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes while we're still going through our experiences, we think like, woe is me, why me, right? But like you said, why not? Just
Why
like
not?
God could use you. You could be the person that changes this other person's mindset. Speaking about diversity, just like I remember my first attorney, I needed who represented me. She told me that she did not like black people off the rip,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now
Mm-hmm.
for most people, that would have scared them away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was just like, listen, you know, I've got experience with white people, black people, Arab people. I lived in Morocco. I can speak Arabic, French. So, you know, I'm not really deterred by that comment, but I am going to ask you why,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, most people don't get past the initial jabs to figure out why, or to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how, or to figure out what,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when that woman told me that, it was just like, I could have just said, okay, well, let me go find somebody else, right? Or I could sit here and realize that maybe God positioned me to be here with this person for a particular reason. And I said, nah, I want you to represent me. But we're going to get to the bottom of how you feel and why you feel this way. And by the end of it, you know, we ended up becoming somewhat friends, right? And she was just like, you know, thank you, Tyrell, for not giving up on me. She said,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of my stereotypes and my biases just came from hurt, right? And she's like, and a lot of it was with black women. And I'm just like, it was like, yeah, you know, but the same things that you are pegging somebody else for, you got to ask yourself, did you do something, right? And it was just like, so, you know, so like you said, God will uniquely use you if you allow yourself to be used.
Yes, yes. And I think too, just to piggyback off of that, as a practitioner and thinking about how people receive my trainings, one of the pieces that strikes me is that you chose to teach in that moment. You chose to take on the battle per se. And I think that for those of us who are uh in a space to be open to what the Lord has for us later on and how he wants us to influence the world. We are the light of the world, the salt of the earth. We know this, but there's a healthy balance when it comes to structural and systemic racism and what that might look like in the workplace and how that might show up, just to show a duality of that. Sometimes it's as if we're tasked with always having to educate, and sometimes that's not our issue, right? When you hold position and power, it's your job to educate yourself at some point. And I like to have that healthy balance. You chose in that moment, that was your choice. But there are some people who are navigating American workforce spaces and they're being told to do that.
Yep.
And it's a mode of survival for not only their professional lives, but for their personal lives. And I think that a line needs to be drawn and things need to be super clear, around that. So, you chose that and you were empowered in that moment. But I also want to uplift the people who don't have a choice at this time.
Love it. I love it. And I will willingly accept it. Let me see. One of the things I always like asking here or doing on this platform too is diving into your professional space, of course, but I always like to dive into who you are as a person. And I think, and I say this to all of the guests, a lot of times it seems like the older we get, the more people be forgetting about the inner child or the inner spirit that's still within us, right? And we forget to just have fun. So I like to have fun. So I'm just going to ask you a question, and it'll help me to better understand who you are, and it'll tapping back into your younger self, knowing what you know now, right? If you were to tap back into your younger self, what is something you wish that someone would have told the younger version of you, Charlene?
I wish that I knew more about who the God is that I serve. I wish I knew more than the surface level, Jesus died for my sins, I should accept him, don't sin, sin is this, 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 and this. Like these list of things. I wish I knew the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when I was a kid, with somebody where it was more impressioned on me to get to know my God and understand all the valiant works that he's done. The fact that he's compassionate, kind, slow to anger, what true sin looks like to him, how to be free from bondage, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I wish I knew those things when I was younger, as late as my foundation, as they did during the times when the Hebrew people were very close to their God. I'm almost jealous of that. Yeah. Like not in a bad way. Like I have respect, but I wish I knew that. I feel like to be more connected to my creator from a younger age would have been something that I would tell my younger self.
I love it. I love it. You just made me think about how much I cry probably every night, no lie, praying with my kids. And it's just like to hear their prayers at because I got a 14-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. But to hear my two youngest ones pray, I literally probably cry almost every night. Like, thank you, God. Like, I must be doing something right. And they're just like the most thoughtful people in the world. Just like, thank you, God, for everybody who's here and who's not here. And it's just like, oh my gosh, But like you said, so if you can have that level of confidence, imagine what it would have done for you, confidence in your relationship with our Father. You know what I mean? Then, because the world tells us how to do everything else besides have that connection. It's just like, you gotta, in order to be accepted, in order to be cool, you have to be, doing everything opposite that's really gonna get you somewhere. And I had to navigate that same process, even in the streets. It's just like, everything that they're telling us to do to stay real is really getting us nowhere. So it's just like, how many people do I need to keep watch go in and out of jail? How many people do I need to keep watching die? Right. And just like, I got to figure out something else. It can't be this. Right. But yeah, I'm glad you said
agree. That. Yeah. Thank you for that, because what I'm really saying is that I wish I knew what generational curses were. There's generational, intergenerational, and generational bondage our people are in. Some of us just by default. And when you can recognize that, like, man, like I wish I knew, but I recognize, like they say, right? Trust the process.
Trust the process.
You trust the process, you go through it, because the one thing's for certain, two things for sure, or one thing's for sure, two things for certain. You from New York, you already.
You sound like that.
Is that God's promises are yea and amen. He said he'll never leave us nor forsake us. So even though I wasn't able to tell my younger self that, I still was able to learn it at an older age. But if I knew it at a younger age, I just imagine how much more I could have accomplished by this age. Yes. Not accomplished in terms of like recognition and money and things that no. I'm talking like how much deeper I could have been in my relationship with my creator. you know.
I love it. I love it. Let me see. I'm gonna take you off on a tangent right now.
Okay.
Right. This one's gonna be less what is it? Heavy.
Okay.
So I like to do this round, and I call it rapid fire. Right.
Okay.
Rapid fire allows me to engage with you, find out some very funny things or interesting things that most people might not know about you. Be 60 seconds. I cannot engage, so I have to be quiet and accept your answers and move to the next one.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm ready for rapid fire.
All right. Let me see what you got. Um, if you were to choose a favorite season out of the year, what would it be?
Summer.
Summer. If you could choose your favorite sneaker, your favorite shoe, what would that be?
Air Max 95s.
All right. If you had
react.
if you had a what is your cheat meal? What is your cheat go to? Let's say you looking for a pick me upper. It was a rough day today of educating people on DEI. What is your cheat food? What is your cheat meal?
A beer. Preferably an IPA.
All right, let me see.
Ohio.
If you were to live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Eleuthera, Bahamas, because I'm from the Bahamas, but Eleuthera, I don't know if you guys know, but Morton Salt is from the Bahamas. And in Eleuthera, you can see the salt like coming up on the shore. Like you just get it from there. And I would love to live there because it's beautiful. It's right next to Harbor Island. Like, I hope to retire there.
Okay. I was about to say you're gonna have high blood pressure, but I'm not supposed to be talking right now.
Not to eat the salt, but it's just very beautiful to see.
Nah, I'm just kidding. Let me see. If you had to choose, what would be your biggest fear?
You know what? God did not give us the spirit of fear. He gave me power. He gave me love. And he gave me a sound mind. On top of that, he commanded me, be of good courage. Neither be afraid, be not afraid, neither be dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. So I literally denounce fear. I don't even want to think about it. I'm just gonna put the scripture on it.
Boom. And we're gonna drop it right there. Thank you for indulging me in 60 seconds of rapid fire. And that has that's how you end rapid fire.
You feel me? Put the scripture on it. The word. That was fun. I like that.
This one here is probably my favorite question out of 4 seasons. And I love it because everyone who's on the show has their own experiences. But for you, if you were to define success, how would you define success for you?
Oh man, that's so easy. When I go before Judgment Day, you know, Jesus said the king is gonna sit on the throne, right? And he's gonna judge everybody. And he's gonna separate the goats from the sheep. I want to hear when they call the trumpet, bum, ba-dun-dun, and the angels call me forward. I want to see God smile and be like, well done, my good and faithful servant. Success. That means I've gone from time to eternity, having lived out my destiny that he prepared for me before the foundations of the world. To me, that's success.
Let me follow up to that.
Okay.
Has that always been your definition of success, or has your definition evolved over the years? And when do you think that did?
My definition has certainly evolved over the years. You know, I wasn't always saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was in the streets. I'm from New York City. I was doing foolishness, partying Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. My definition of success was how many people thought I had money, how many clothes and bags and weaves I had, and the foolishness. I thought my success was measured by what other people thought about me. And it was destroying me,
Mm.
literally from the inside out. It was destroying me slowly, like I was drinking poison every day. And I started to have self-esteem issues. I didn't want to even look at myself in the mirror. I just thought that I was this complete failure because I was looking for this validation from people,
Mm.
and I didn't recognize that my validation didn't come from people. My validation came from Christ Jesus. And it wasn't until I had my encounter with Christ where I was snot, boogers, and tears, desperate, because there was a hole, a gaping hole in my heart, like, or my it felt like either there was a gaping hole in my heart or my heart was in bits and pieces. Like it wasn't even like really a heart there. And I went to God and because I see my grandmother, my mother, everybody saying this Jesus, right? And I went in snot, boogers, and tears. And I was like, I need help. I'm desperate. I need help. This pain. I feel like I feel destroyed. I feel distraught. I don't know what's happening. And I had my encounter with Jesus, and he came to me and he told me that he loves me for me. He made me the way that I am because I was made in his image. And so that's when I started to change my idea of success, because at that time, my idea of success had been destroying me. And it wasn't until Jesus, but God.
I love the vulnerability. I love the transparency, and I love the honesty, are all in the answer. And it's just like, imagine, once again, being trained in the world, saying I'm supposed to behave, I'm supposed to operate this way. But like you said, it's slowly killing me. And it's not until sometimes for most of us that we hit a breaking point, which is normally rock bottom, or what we think is rock bottom at the time. And just like, listen, God, I need something else. This ain't working. So, a lot of times people will ask me, they'll be like, "Well, how'd you like build a relationship with God?" And I'm just like, I tried it my way already. I tried every possible thing that you could think of, right?
Exactly.
And it didn't work, and it was still hurting. And then just like,
Failed
okay,
miserably.
yeah. So it's just like, oh, so what do you keep doing? You keep doing that same thing, or do you try something else? So, and trying God has been the best thing for me and my family. But I felt everything that you just said. It was just like oozing out, just like, God loves you for who you are. And then you end up learning that those experiences that we went through were for a reason,
Right.
right? Those experiences become your storyboard of why you're such an impactful educator and consultant in the space that you're in right now, right? And I tell everybody, it's just like, hey, you know what it also does? Sorry about that. I don't know how my wife's messages still get through there. What it also does is it'll teach you to embrace your own superpower, right? You're like, sometimes we're ashamed of our past, we're ashamed of our experiences. But what I've learned is that those experiences are what actually make us who we are. So I walk into every room now just like, hey, listen, I'm a Black man. I've got every possible experiences that you can think of. I've hustled. I got kicked out of school. I've also went to school, graduated, traveled abroad. I have a great job, have a great family, right? And it's just like,
and a book that
and a
talks
book.
about this.
But I walk, those experiences have now become part of who I am. And I tell everybody else that, that's our superpower. And when I hear you speak, now you can say it in a way that, and where your power is coming from. But even your experiences before, those that is what made your superpower what it was. Now is just being able to tap into that and to utilize it, not in a way that just profits me, but that God could see glory, or his kingdom can see glory from out of what it is that I'm doing. My hurts have now become a gift.
Yes, I love it. Jesus revealed and Jesus glorified. That's what it's about. I love that question.
But how do you stay balanced and everything that you're doing, because if I'm not mistaken, you also do a podcast too, right? So you got podcasting going on, you got DEI going on, you got auntie work going on, you got back and forth from New York City to Albany going on. How do you find a healthy work-life balance for you?
I learned to have boundaries from the beginning. So before I go into any situation, I create my boundaries. What does that mean for me, right? I thought you were going to ask me about my name. Like when you said you were going to ask us some questions to get to know us when we were kids. I was going to tell you guys, I guess I'll tell you now, my name, Charlene, means free spirit. And I'm super, like, anyone who knows me to not out. You remember that song? You
don't say it. Don't say it. Go ahead.
That used to be my anthem. You ain't gonna tie me down. I cannot do. Don't think you're gonna put me in a box. Don't think you're gonna shackle me into a space. Process and that thinking that's like innately in me and is a part of my personality. When I go into spaces, I'm always thinking about that balance. So I'm saying, if I'm going to commit to something, my goal and my job is to create a system around this that affords me the opportunity to have that freedom, to retreat when I need to have that freedom to express myself when I need to have that freedom to be able to authentically articulate, my thoughts. So I always create these systems around me in any one of these given spaces that serve me and serve the purposes of why I'm there. I don't just go in without any agenda or intentions. So I know sometimes some people are like, they give me looks like, she got an agenda. And it's like, yeah, you're right. I do have an agenda, but it's not about you. It's more about how I preserve and protect myself. So even when I coach, because I do DEI coaching with executives and those who are, frontline workers. When I do the coaching, that's one of the things that I share with my clients is like, you need to make your boundaries and they need to work for you. And you need to be able to articulate those boundaries in a healthy way and be able to defend them if you have to. Right? Until they become systemic in nature, where people just are like, oh, that's just how they interact. Or that, well, they don't work after 5 o'clock. Or don't expect an email at 11 o'clock at night because she's not going to do that, right? So making sure I create those boundaries help me with that work-life balance piece. And then, every once in a while, me and God, we've been working on this. Like I said, my beer,
my snack,
my cheap snack. I will go to the little brewery or something like that and have me a beer. I don't drink it in excess, but it is another way to release.
Absolutely. I killed myself the other day. Yeah. I was sitting there. I was at home in the compounds of my house, and I poured too much in my drink, and I felt every bit of it Sunday. Going to church, and I'm just like, I don't know what I did last night, but I can't do that one again.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So, trying to have those healthy boundaries. I had just one more thing. When I was in my 20s, my early 20s, I started to recognize that people acted like they didn't understand what I was saying to them.
In regards to what?
I don't know. It was like I would say something and I thought that I was sharing what I meant, but they would take it and I don't know. To me, what I was perceiving in the moment was like I was speaking Charlie Brown half the time. And so I went on this journey in my 20s to start articulating myself precisely so that there wasn't any ambiguity in how somebody perceived what I was saying. So that's another piece that I used to create, that balance, is being very specific and clear and concise.
And you can be, what is it? I appreciate it because it's like the clarity you get when someone is like, if I said something to you, I know what I said to you. I thought about it, I articulated it in my brain, and I realized, the consequences of what it is that may come out of my mouth. I thought about it. So, when I say it, I want you to feel it. I want you to understand it and be like, oh, Tyrell didn't know what he meant. No, if I said it to you, I meant what I meant. As my
I
mom would say,
said what I said.
yeah, I stand on what I stand on.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah.
let me see. I got I have to get to this one before I go to my next question.
Okay.
I hinted earlier how Charlene and I met, and like I said, we were having a snack at Johnny's, as she likes to call
Shout
it.
out to Jamila and Johnny's.
Let's
We love
go.
you.
I want some wings.
Okay.
But we were having a conversation around race, and it was, let me make sure I get it out correctly. We were having this whole idea, whole conversation about race, and we're talking about racism. And for me, in my experience, and especially when I was doing my research program, I have a different understanding than most of my Black counterparts as it pertains to racism. And we had a very healthy dialogue on this that day. And my stance was that Black people could be racist, right? And every person I've ever had this conversation with, it's always been met with, Tyrell, they cannot, we don't have any power. It's associated with power, right? And I'm laughing, and I don't mean to say it as if it's a light conversation at all, because it's not. But based upon my experiences, I've realized, or I believe, that we can have our own prejudices.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between discrimination and racism. Racism is a belief, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fundamental belief. You believe a particular thing, and then there's discrimination, right? So Charlene and I had this nice heated conversation. I said, I can't wait to get you on here, because we're gonna break it down, as they said in Love Jones. We're gonna break it down so it can forever and consistently be broke.
That's it.
Can Black people be racist? Why or why not?
Absolutely not. like I said that night. So guys, I'm gonna take you through a little journey. I'm actually gonna give you guys, I told Tyrell I'm about to give him that work today. So please put in the comments work. If I actually accomplish my goal, please put in the comments WORK. Okay. And if you feel it real spicy, because I'm from the Bahamas and I love me some Riri, she from Barbados, put work. All right. All right. So let me take you guys through the journey. So I have one of my most popular trainings is called Words Have Meaning. And it's a DEI and belonging terminology workshop. And what I do is I take people through a doctrine of terms and a system of action terms that are used as diagnoses and cures in the DEI realm. So I just dropped the whole jewel on y'all, right? Like, you got that for the free. Y'all better like, subscribe, all of that, okay? And so one of the things that I'd like to bring to our attention is that, can Black people be racist? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the definition of racism, and then I'm going to give you an equation by Crossroads Anti-Racism and Training. And I want us to discuss that and really come to the crux of whether or not Black people can be racist. Now, racism, according to the scholarly definition, is the oppression of people of color based on a socially constructed racial hierarchy that gives privilege to white people. And a part of that racial hierarchy is institutional racism. And that is to institutionalize practices or policies that create different outcomes for various racialized groups. All right. Now I'm gonna give you one more definition that has something is correlated with this, and that's oppression.
Well, before you even do that, I gotta tell you that wasn't the same definition of racism in 2004, right? So when I was doing my research program, there was a different a definition of racism, but carry on.
No, I think that this is why Words Have Meaning is so popular. It's because depending on where you research these terms, and this is a part of the structural racism that's happening in this country, sometimes there's a washing of the actual meaning of the term. And the washing of the actual meaning of the term is to circumvent how that term diagnoses the problem. So if I tell you that racism is simply an ideology, you're going to think that anything that shows up as an ideology, you can call racism. But if I tell you that racism is a structural, institutional, oppressive process that was created as a framework to ensure affording access to one type of people and stripping access from another, now when you identify racist systems and structures, action has to happen. And a part of the system, what the system does is it pivots and it moves the goalposts. It's so sophisticated. It knows how to move the goalposts. So now you're stuck in smoke and mirrors. Now there's a question as to whether or not Black people can be racist. And now the term reverse racism comes into play. And what does that do? That negates and deconstructs the diagnoses of what racism actually is, or how the term is supposed to be used. So lastly, the oppression piece. So we went through racism, and I'll say it again for the audience, not for you, because I know you're smart. I'm not saying the audience is not smart. I didn't come for y'all.
Plus, I changed my definition already. I
mean,
I changed my stance just based upon the first one.
So we'll go through the definitions again. Racism, the oppression of people of color based on a socially constructed racial hierarchy. And here's the key, that gives privilege to white people. And that has been constructed through institutional racism, which is to institutionalize practices or policies, remember those laws and legislation, that create different outcomes for various racial groups or those who are racialized. And the means, right, that they use to do this is called oppression. Once again, these terms are terms that you use to diagnose and cure. Oppression, systemic and institutional abuse of power by a dominant or privileged group at the expense of targeted, less privileged groups. So we have racism. We know that it's affording one group more power than another. Then we have the institutional racism that upholds policies and laws to give them that power. And then we have the oppression, where we're abusing that power to ensure that we target those less privileged groups and we keep those dominant groups in their space. Now, based on those three definitions, and if we see the interlocking of that racialized system, that racism system, can Black people be racist?
No.
Work.
I stand corrected after from 2004 to 2023.
Yeah.
I can say that, I have a new stance based upon that framework. But, it also stems back to something that you said earlier, which it doesn't, realizing that Black people can't be racist, it also doesn't totally take away the fact that we have, like you said, we got to wake up ourselves too. There's different things that we need to be more aware of, to do more, and not just saying because these things are So you still place the accountability, because I think that's what a lot of people do. They just say that there's no accountability on us. And
Right.
in your definition, I hear you're saying that it doesn't totally absolve us of everything, but understanding the systemic or the institutionalized definition of racism as itself, I can easily accept that. When you said it, I was just like, okay, well, this is going to be a short fight.
Right. So let me give you the terminology that you would use to hold people of color to accountable, right? Mm-hmm. So although you're using the word prejudice properly, although we know that based on those definitions, based on the system of terms that are used to diagnose racism, we know that Black people cannot be racist according to those. But what Black people do engage in is something called internalized racism. And this happens when an oppressed group believes that the racial views that society communicates are true, and they act as if they are true, and they uphold that truth. So one of the things that we can do as, Black folks who are looking to wake up our people, move our people into a space where they're able to verbalize these terms and be able to navigate in these spaces is you may be exhibiting internalized racism, where you are a part of an oppressed group, and the messaging that dominant groups that has this is afforded this morality, you're willing to uphold blindly. And what you need to disrupt is that internalized racism, instead of there being some sort of reverse racism or things of that nature, right? It's that internalized racism that we really need to get to the crux of. And then lastly, the last piece, after we wake them up, shake them up out of that internalized racism, now we just think about systemic racism on a whole, right? So we have the word racism, we have institutional racism, we have oppression, we have internalized dominance, and then we have systemic racism, which is the lockstep of all of these concepts in one. And that is race prejudice plus the misuse of power by systems and institutions equal racism. So by that definition, race prejudice plus the misuse, remember that abuse of power by systems and institutions equal racism. Once again, I'm going to ask, can Black people be racist according to this formula? No. Work. I'm so nerdy. I love this stuff. I love it.
And honestly, and like I said, I appreciate the it's kind of like the same way how I said I didn't give up on that white woman who told me that she didn't like Black people. Right. I appreciate you walking me through that, and the fact that I trust what you're saying enough to easily let go of something I've been holding on to for that long and say, okay, yeah, let's change
good that. Research is good research.
Yeah. So thank you.
Able to finish that because I told you I was like, I got something for you, though, Tyrone.
Somebody came prepared. Somebody came prepared.
Yes, I came prepared. I've been waiting a year to have finished this conversation because we couldn't finish it because it was like, why are we having this conversation at this Black-owned establishment? Yeah. Two Black people, we met. It was like, oh, you're a professional. You guys need to know each other. And we're like, Black people can't be racist. No, Black people can't. So I'm super excited and super thankful that you invited me on the Black community and we were able to model some of this behavior, right?
And it'll be in existence for forever. So when you see me or you ready to put in that work, say Tyrell, just go back, watch that episode, replay that episode. Okay, remember who got the business. Okay, all right. Let me see, man. I got two more questions for you, Charlie.
You took it so well.
Listen. That I have learned to be humble and embrace humility. The worst thing you can do is realize that you're wrong and still defend it.
Oh,
it makes no sense. It takes nothing away from me to be able to say that I was wrong, that I have evolved in my thinking on it. It takes everything to stay in that stuck position for no reason. So no. All right. Two more questions for you, and I'm letting you go.
Okay.
All right. First question is, thinking about all that you have accomplished thus far in your life, and God willing, there's still much more to do, create on that path of making sure that He says, welcome home, good job, right?
Yes.
What about your life's path are you most proud of, Charlene?
Oh my gosh, it's such a hard question.
You answered all the hard ones easy,
Really?
and then the easy ones are hard. So there you go. Take at it.
This is hard. The thing that I'm most proud of. Okay, I think that the thing that I'm most proud of in my life is that I when the calling came to me, right? Because I didn't even talk to you about my ministry with young people. We haven't even touched that piece, but I'll bring it as a new piece right now. There was a calling on my life for young people. Remember, I told you I was at the Harlem Children's Zone. I was at CSO, which is the College Success Office, well, formerly known as CSO, now Checks. And I work with a bunch of young people. Like I think I've touched like thousands of young people's lives over the years in higher education and at the nonprofit level. And when they hit me up and they're like, I need this recommendation to law school. Or they hit me up and they're like, oh, could you give me a recommendation to this new tech job that I'm having on Wall Street? Or like they hit me up like, yeah, I'm gonna like defer MIT for 2 years. Things of that nature make me so proud. Like they don't even notice, but like sometimes I cry because I'm just like, wow, like I met you in a time in your life where you maybe didn't even want to have someone like me in your life. And I kind of like imposed myself on you. Like I mama bared them all the way through because I didn't have that when I was coming up. So to see that all of the young people that I've had direct contact with have excelled in their lives, like they just take off. It makes me feel proud that like I did something all right. I gave them some good advice and they were able to take it and multiply it and soar in this world, instead of surviving, scratching and surviving, hanging and a jiving. Is that what the lyric is? Did we ever finalize the lyric? Okay. Like we don't have to scratch and survive. We could thrive.
Yes.
And it makes me super proud. And it's a lot of them. And I keep my number the same so they could hit me up when they feel like it. So that's something that I'm proud
of. Okay. And thank you for your work because, it's a thankless job in a lot of ways, but it's probably one of the most impactful and beneficial jobs. And I say that too. Shout out to teachers because, it's the most underpaid job, but to be honest, it's probably the most impactful work, changing the life and the direction of someone else for forever.
Yeah.
So thank you for your willingness to work with the youth.
Thanks. I appreciate it. All right.
And my last question is easy. Promise you, easy.
You sure? No, I'm kidding.
I think that your work is too powerful, too dynamic. In this hour-long interview, you've taken a very stubborn-minded man and had him change his thought process as it pertains to Black people and racism as a whole, right? That just shows the world or gives the world a small glimpse of what it is that you do in the DEI space. So my last question is, how do I tell the audience, how do I tell the viewers, how do they locate you? How do they find you on your website? How do they find you on social media? How do we get to Charlene?
Awesome. So you can go to my website, www.imanaborena. How you hear it is the way you say it, .org. And it's right here in my little thing right here. So if you go to www.imanaborena.org and you scroll all the way down, all of my social media is there. It's easy, a click. I have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can get in contact with me anyway. You can fill out the contact page, which will go to our info page. And I'm super easily accessible. I'm easily accessible through those means. So Or you can hit me up on IG at Imana Borena Inc. or on Twitter at Imana Inc.
All right. And I'll be sure to add each of those tags once I go ahead and post this video as well. So it makes it even easier for you guys to just click and get directly to her. Char, I just want to say thank you again for affording me your time today. Thank you for not totally having me pick my face back up off the floor and allowing me to have some dignity and me humbly accepting that I needed to change that stance.
What do we do? Work.
But thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Like I said, thank you for affording me your time, and continue to grow, expand, continue to allow God to utilize you and realize that your past, your story is your superpower. Thank you for being on the Back Community today.
Thank you for having me. This was amazing. It really was.
Well, listen, man, I'm going to let you get back to it. Thank you again, and I'll play catch up with you next time.
All right. Peace out.
Later.
Keep climbing up the ladder. Black lives matter. They matter. So all you young people, give it all. 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 Matter. Black lives matter. They matter. Black lives matter.